Okay, let's dive into something we do every single day. An activity so common we almost never stop to think about how unbelievably complex it really is.
So let me ask you something. What's the most complex thing you do every day? The thing that takes the most brain power. Just take a second and think about it. You might be thinking, oh, it's got to be my job, or maybe driving in that crazy traffic, or hey, for some of us, just getting out of bed is a major win. And you know what? Those are all great answers.
But what if the real answer was something you've been doing pretty much without thinking since you were a toddler?
Yep, we're talking about conversation. In this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and show you the hidden genius, the mental gymnastics that go into just having a normal chat. So let's get into it. Okay, first things first. We have to talk about the great deception of easy speech. It's this idea that because talking feels easy, it is easy. But the truth is, it's one of the most complex things we ever learn to do.
And this quote really just hits the nail on the head. We do it all day, every day, so we just assume it's no big deal. But that feeling, that's the illusion.
But we've all had those moments where the curtain drops, right? When you're trying to tell a really great story, or nail the timing on a joke, or heck, even just trying to give someone simple directions. Suddenly, it doesn't feel so easy. You can almost feel the gears turning in your brain. You're planning, searching for the right word, changing direction halfway through a sentence. That is what's really going on all the time, just usually under the surface.
So if it's that complex, what is actually going on up there before we even open our mouths? Well, it turns out your brain has this sort of secret checklist it runs through every single time.
Seriously, every time you're about to speak, your brain is doing this lightning-fast calculation. It's asking, what does the other person already know? What's the social vibe here? Does what I'm about to say even make sense? And crucially, it's working on the assumption that you're both trying to make the conversation work. And all of this, it happens in like a fraction of a second. It's wild.
And check out how this actually works in practice. This is a perfect example. In a formal setting, you might say, we should contact the policeman. But with your friends, you're going to say, we should call the cops. Same meaning, totally different words. That one little choice is all about reading the social context. It's something we do automatically, but it makes a huge difference.
Okay, so that's the big picture. Now let's zoom in a little and look at how we actually build the sentences themselves. Because it turns out, word order isn't random at all. It's basically a superpower we use to direct our listeners' focus. Here's the key idea. We're constantly sorting information. We build our sentences to manage what the listener already knows, we can call that the given stuff, versus the stuff that's brand new to them, the new information. And one of the coolest ways we do this is with stress, just changing which word we emphasize. Listen to this. If I say, it was your brother who stole the money, the new important piece of information is the who. But if I say, it was the money that your brother stole, see that? The focus completely shifts. Now the new information is what was stolen. It's the exact same words, but the focus is completely different. Another clever trick in our toolkit is something called the frame and insert. The frame is like setting the scene. It's the background context you give the listener so they know where you're coming from. And the insert, that's the new bit of info you're dropping into that scene. Here's a great example. If I say, on the film set, Mr. Fields was delightful, on the film set, that's the frame. I'm setting the stage, I'm telling you where this happened. Then comes the insert, Mr. Fields was delightful. That's the new info. It's a really subtle but super effective way to make sure your listener is right there with you. All right, so we've been focused on what one person does. But conversation is never a solo act, right? It's more like a dance. And just like any dance, it has a bunch of unspoken rules that everyone just knows.
And a huge part of that dance is built on these things called adjacency pairs. It's really just the basic rhythm of conversation. Think about it. I ask a question, you give an answer. I say hello, you say hello back. It's this simple call and response that keeps the whole thing moving forward.
But for any of that rhythm to even work, we all have to be playing by the same fundamental rule. It's called the cooperative principle. And it's just this basic unspoken agreement that when we talk to each other, we're both trying to be understood. We're assuming the other person isn't trying to trick us or be confusing on purpose. And this whole principle really boils down to 4 simple guidelines we all follow without even thinking. 1, don't give way too much or way too little information. 2, try to tell the truth. 3, stay on topic. And 4, try to be clear and make sense. When someone breaks these rules, that's when conversations get awkward or just plain weird really fast.
All right, to bring it all home, let's look at a few special little tools that are pretty much only used in spoken language. Think of them as special gear for managing a conversation in real time.
First, you've got discourse markers. These are words like well, so, right. We say them all the time, and they might sound like filler, but they're not. They're basically the turn signals of conversation. They let the other person know you're about to change direction or start a new thought.
Then there are tag questions. These are those little questions you stick on the end of a sentence, right? They're an amazing way to pull your listener in and check if they're on the same page. It just makes the whole thing feel more like a team effort, doesn't it?
And last but not least, interjections. We're talking about words like, oh, wow, and oops. These are like little emotional shortcuts. They're these tiny bursts of sound that pack a huge punch, communicating surprise or excitement or a mistake way faster than a whole sentence ever could.
So yeah, the next time you're just shooting the breeze with someone, take a second and think about all the incredible stuff happening just below the surface. All those rules, all those calculations, all that secret genius at work. Now that you've seen behind the curtain, I have to ask, will you ever hear a simple conversation the same way again?